Americans were glued to their screens as they watched the unfolding of a trial that would capture the nation's attention for so many different reasons. Many of you can imagine that I'm talking about the case of Orenthal James Simpson, who was tried for the double murder of his ex-wife and her friend, Ronald Goldman. Amen. Now, this case was interesting for so many reasons. One, the status of O.J. Simpson. He was an American hero. He was a football player, a Heisman Trophy winner who no doubt was celebrated for his feats on the field, even though at this point he kind of fell into obscurity as he was at that point portraying, helping sell rental cars with Hertz. But this trial captivated the audience of so many people for many reasons. You see, the problem with any trial or any situation of this matter, the reason that we have to have trials is because nobody really knows what happened. Unless you are a first-hand witness, unless you're there at the scene of a crime, then you really don't know what happened. All you have is evidence. All you have is proof. But what we have to be mindful of is that lawyers spend years and lots of money going to school learning how to take evidence and take proof and to switch it so it says what they want it to say. Right. So that even if you have evidence, even if you have proof, how certain can you really be of a certain matter, lest you experience it or witness it or perceived it for yourself? Right. And so the stage was set, and it was a polarized battle because it was the job of the prosecutors they bared the burden of proof to prove that this man indeed was guilty. Now, they came with an impressive defense, many would say. Many would say they brought lots of evidence, circumstantial evidence that to them proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that this man was guilty of the crimes for which he was charged. First of all, there was the blood. And this was just around the time when DNA evidence was starting to be more popular in use. In fact, this is a trial that helped propel the use of DNA testing in trials. Why? Because there were not only one sample, but there were two samples of blood. There was the blood that was on the scene. And one of the blood samples that was on the scene, they said there was only one person that it could have belonged to. And you can only imagine who that person was. Not only was there that blood spatter at the scene, but also in his house, in a sock, there was a blood spatter that could have only belonged to one other person, and that was his ex-wife. And so with these pieces of evidence, the defense, or the prosecutors rather, started to build their case. And so what they did is they went to find witnesses. Now, there were no eyewitnesses to the crime, at least none that came forward or none that were alive to be able to say what actually happened. But what they did is they found Nicole Brown Simpson's family. They talked to her sister. And her sister, with such emotion, talked about how she witnessed O.J. violently throw her sister against a wall. They painted a picture of a man who was abusive, a man who was full of rage, a man who even said that he had dreams of killing his ex-wife because if no one else could have her, if he couldn't have her, then no one else could have her. They found witnesses who talked about the fact that he hated his ex-wife with such a passion. Then there was also what they did not have. They did not have a solid alibi. No one between the space of 2 hours can account for this person's whereabouts. There was not one person that they found that was able to say, yes, I can vouch for O.J. At this time, he was with me. The closest one that they had was Ken Kaliner, who was quite the character in himself. He had a few issues, if you ask me, but that's beside the point. But he was a colorful character. He was O.J.'s house guest. And he said he remembered seeing him about 9 or a little before 9:30 when they parted ways, and after that, he took a nap, and so he really didn't know where O.J. was after that. And then there was the limo driver. The one who was knocking at O.J.'s door at 10:25, taking him to be able to take him to the airport where he was supposed to be flying to Chicago. Right. So there was a gap of time where the prosecutors say he undoubtedly had enough time to be able to get from his house to his ex-wife's house, commit the act in question, and rush back and come out and wipe his eyes and say, "Oh, sorry, I was sleeping." This was the prosecution's defense, and in their mind, they had an airtight defense. They were undoubtedly certain that they would win this case. But you see, on the other side, for the defense, they had a skilled lawyer in Johnny Cochran. See, if you don't remember, there were the famous phrase from that courtroom was that if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. And so what Johnny Cochran did so skillfully, that was the only thing he did though. See, Johnny Cochran was sly, and that's why he was good at what he did. Because he preyed on the jury's emotions. See, what you have to know is that the jury was mostly a minority jury. And so there was already racial tension that was raging in this area. So there was already the idea that, of course, there's a black man on trial, so he can't possibly get a fair trial. And so he played on their emotions, and he executed a wonderful defense, or a great persuasive defense, by calling his family in. First, they put his young daughter, who must have been maybe around 11 or 12 at the time, not even, put him on the stand to talk about how wonderful her daddy was. Then they brought his elderly mother up and talked about what an upstanding man he was. So much so that by this point in the trial, it seemed that the audience had more sympathy for O.J. and his family than they did for the two murder victims and for their family. And so the evidence came together, and both sides presented their defense. Both sides presented their evidence in an effort to convince the jury to whom it was to make the decision to side with them, to believe that what they presented was really fact. So much so that they got up and forced O.J. to try on the glove. And that, in one small swoop, I don't know if anyone remembers watching, I was looking through videos of it, but it's like you could see that the jury's kind of, if anyone had any doubt at that point, when that glove didn't fit, when he was struggling to put on the glove, it was like, okay, well, that's it, case closed. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. And so this body of evidence came together. And it was up to the jury, in less than 4 hours, in a landmark amount of time, they declared that this man, regardless of all the evidence that they had, they declared that he was not guilty. So who was right? Who knew exactly what happened? Who was able to declare that this man was not guilty? The Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, what is substance? Substance is a particular kind of matter that has mass and occupies space. In other words, substance is something tangible, something I can touch, something I can feel, something I can experience, something that I can identify and say, yes, this is real. Something that I can take my senses and identify that, yes, this is really there. I know that this pulpit is really here because I can see it with my eyes, and I can touch it with my hands, and if I try and kick it, which of course I wouldn't, I'd no doubtly stub my toe, and actually I did that the other day when I was vacuuming. I kind of kicked it on purpose, and it hurt, especially when you're not wearing any shoes. But I know that it's real. It's an object. It takes up space. No two objects can occupy the same space, so I know that this is really here. It's not a figment of my imagination. I know it to be true. But faith is the substance of things hoped for. Now, what we need to understand first about faith is that it's a substance, so it's something tangible. And what faith does, it transcends the senses. In other words, faith uses what you know, what you can experience, what you can point to as real, as a stepping stone to what you cannot otherwise know. So faith says that this substance is real, or what I desire, because faith is the substance of things hoped for. So it's the tangible proof that said what I desire is real. I can point to it. I can hold it. It becomes it. It transcends the senses and uses what we know to a stepping stone to perceive that which we cannot otherwise know. But what we have to understand is that faith is that substance or that tangible thing of what we hope for, or what we want, or what we desire. And in this chapter that we read, we heard about these men who, through great exploits, through their faith, show and reflect that they desired God. Why? Because through their faith, because they desired something. And in this case, because they desired God, they received God. Because they used what they could, what they knew, the concrete things that they knew, they used that as proof, as a stepping stone to get to the understanding that this God that they served is real. And that since this God that they served is real, he was able to do what he said he would do. Abel, when he says, by faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain. But notice the situation. See, both of them offered sacrifices. In other words, somewhere along the way, both of them received instruction that offering sacrifices was what they were supposed to do. So they both had the same information. They both had the same proof, if you will. But yet, faith that Abel had, that desire that Abel had, drove him to offer an excellent sacrifice, to give not just a sacrifice, but to give the best sacrifice, because he understood that that's what God required, was the best. Not just to give a sacrifice just so he could say, well, I've appeased God, I've done my duty, so now I can go and do my own thing. But he desired God. He said, Lord, I want you, so if I'm instructed that I'm not to give a sacrifice, I'm going to give the best that I have to give. And that faith, that tangible substance becomes what he wanted, what he desired. So much so that it was said of him that he obtained this witness that he was righteous. Why? Because God testified to his gifts. The Lord received his gift. He says, yes, I know that you want me. Why? Because you've given everything. You've given all. You've given everything. Instead of just giving me something just to kind of appease me, you've given me the best of what you have. So by that, I know that you want me. And by it, he being dead, yet speaks. He yet spoke. Even in death, Abel's sacrifice still spoke to his desire for God. Cain, we know that Cain did not have faith. Because though he offered a sacrifice, it wasn't the best sacrifice. And even when he was given another chance to make things right, the Lord told him, listen, Cain, you messed up. But, because I'm merciful, if you do right, you'll be accepted. But then what does Cain do? He doesn't do right. Why? Because he didn't believe. And the Lord said something crucial. He said that he was talking to sin. He said, sin, your desire, his desire will be to you. And so Cain went after his desire. His desire wasn't a sacrifice. His desire wasn't for God. His desire was for his own thing. And so that's what drove him in that direction. The Bible goes on to say that Enoch desired to be caught up. How can I say that? How can I know that? Because he was.
That's right.
Because he was. That was his desire. See, the Bible doesn't tell us too much about Enoch. But one thing that we know about Enoch is that he walked with God.
Right.
He walked with God, had conversation with God. So he had some kind of proof, some kind of understanding of this God. But Enoch didn't just take that understanding and leave it as it was, but he used it as a stepping stone. And that's what he said, listen, I'm walking with God, and I've seen that God has done some great things. So let me stand on this foundation. Let me see what else God can do. You know, I believe, Lord, okay, I've been walking with you. I'm mortal man, but I'm walking with you, and I'm having this relationship. How else is possible? Lord, if you can do this, what else can you do? And he used that as a stepping stone to get higher and to get closer to the Lord. And to the point where he said, well, listen, you know, if you can do this and you can take me away, I could be caught up. And he believed it. He believed it. And so God granted it. See, the Lord loves it. The Lord loves it. The Bible says that without faith it is impossible to please God. Why? Because when you have faith, you are making a declaration. You are making a declaration. You are pronouncing a verdict in your situation. And you are saying that I am persuaded of something that I cannot know otherwise.
That's right. Yes.
You are saying that you are absolutely persuaded that this is real. I'm using the experience that I know and what I've seen to be able to say that, you know what? I may faith, I know that it's